Well, thank you for coming out today for Vince's celebration of life. I know his family has appreciated everything that the community has done surrounding Vince from his various parts of his life, whether it be LA, baseball, or AA. So thank you, Judy. And I will tell you, I've been very fortunate to come across Vince over the last 5 years. And I'll tell you just a quick story of how that instant connection was made with Vince. He was speaking in a room up in Seattle probably 5 years ago or so to a group of people. And in my mind, you know, Seattle is a little bit different than LA. And the connection that I received from Vince when he was at the podium, he talked about, as an adult, getting some specific direction from somebody very close to him on how to change his life and lead his life in a different way. And it was a very serious discussion of what to do and what not to do. And some might find that it was a little harsh, if you will. And the room was silent here in Seattle. And there was one person who burst out laughing because I understood that, because I got the same kind of direction early on in my adult life on how to change my life. And I burst out laughing. Vince looked around the room. He knew where it came from. And he goes, "Oh, there's somebody here that gets me." And that was the instant connection that I had in my life with Vince. And it covered LA, it covered baseball, and it covered the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So with that, I would just want to say a few words. Obviously, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming today to celebrate the life of Vincent Craig Bailey. Vince, as we all know him. Those of us here today, it's an honor and a privilege to have had the opportunity to be on the base path of life with him. Vince discovered the joy of helping others and lived it through and through, as you will see today, as his family and friends come together to celebrate their stories of this humble man. His commitment to service in action, making the time after time, year after year, is what makes up a successful life and a full life. And Vince was a daily triumph. Let's take a moment as we begin today to pray for light and the strength that Vince projected by pulling others up. And let's have a moment of silence for Vince. Thank you, Vince, for being in all of our lives. And with that, I want to introduce Tiffany to say a few words about her dad.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Bailey, and I'm Vince's daughter, his oldest kid, the only girl, all in one. I just want to kind of read you a little bit about him, what I put together in an obituary about things and about him. So Vincent Craig Bailey, born December 12, 1956, to Georgia Marie Bailey. Raised in Los Angeles, California as the only child, Vincent found a love for baseball at an early age. Just having fun, something to keep him busy. And who could have really realized that he got good at it? This would eventually mold and shape his life in many ways than one. He was mischievous and curious, as most boys at a young age are, but he was very athletic, intelligent, and full of personality. He spent a lot of time growing up with his cousins Malcolm, Jeannie, and Sandra. Vincent attended Washington High School, where he was on a football and baseball team. Upon graduating, He then attended Pepperdine University on a full baseball scholarship. Now it seemed like the possibilities were becoming endless. Vincent went on to play minor league baseball professionally starting in 1975, batting right-handed, throwing right-handed, out in center field. In 1978, at the age of 22 years old, he played with the Elizabethton Twins, which you may know as the Minnesota Twins. In 1979, at 23 years old, he joined the Burlington Bees in Milwaukee. Then in 1982, at the age of 26, he was with the Medford A's. You may know them as the Oakland A's. At this point in his life, the temptations of the fast life, so to say, got the best of him, and this led him to becoming sober November 20th, 1984. He became sober of all the downfalls that life in the fast lane had to offer. This was a life-changing experience for him. Vince began speaking to others, mentoring, and sponsoring others in his AA family, which he enjoyed so much and has made a difference in so many people's lives. He had just celebrated 34 years of being sober. Vince has worked as a teacher for troubled youth, giving hope and tough love to inspire these kids to be all they could be in life. He has embarked on many different business ventures, starting with one in 1990 with his own cleaning business. Then he was a farmer insurance agent. From there, he decided to make a move to Washington State, which became his home. In 2006, he coached baseball for Sammamish High School. He also, at this time, was a coach for the Mudville Select teams. In 2009, Vince started his career with the St. Louis Cardinals as the Western Region Scout, which eventually led him to being honored in 2011 and becoming an inductee to the Professional Baseball Scouts Hall of Fame. He also acquired his World Series championship ring with the Cardinals that year. And now, let's not forget his latest and greatest, Let's Play Ball. He gave baseball lessons and involved himself 100%, not only in teaching, but taking time to teach the fundamentals of the whole thing. On St. Patrick's Day, 1991, Vince and Julie, which is his wife, they set out on a blind date. They met up, hung out, and then before you knew it, those two were a definite item. The courtship began. 8 years later, on December 2nd, 1999, in Oakland, California, they decided to finally make it official, becoming husband and wife. They celebrated 28 years together, years to cherish and hold dear forever in their hearts, a special bond that will never be broken. Vince enjoyed traveling all around the world. He especially loved Europe. He even taught himself to speak Italian. Vince also had a love for all kinds of music, all kinds of cars, from lowriders to trucks to luxury cars. Speaking was another one of his favorites, and most of all, golf. If you know him, you know he likes golf. But more importantly, we cannot forget about his buddy, his pal, Yeller, which is barking right now. Most of all, my dad, he enjoyed life. Vincent leaves behind a wife, Julie, a aunt, Lula, daughter, Tiffany, me, 2 sons, Deshaun and Mitchell, 4 grandsons, Lamar Jr., Kevin Jr., Deshaun Jr., Deshaun III, and a great-grandson, Kevin III, and 1 son-in-law, Lamar Black, along with a host of family and friends. I can honestly say, you guys, that Vince was an extraordinary guy. We'll do the farewells a little later, but I just want to say a couple words about my dad. Just going to tell you a story, and then my son's going to come and say a couple things. Growing up, my dad was doing this thing, out playing ball, traveling the world, doing things. So we weren't really like together till I got about 15. But in that time growing up, my mom put me in ballet lessons. And the ballet lady would be like, plie, and this and that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Don't put that stick on my arm one more time. My mom comes to pick me up, and the lady says, oh, I don't think this is for Tiffany. Okay, so then she went and got pictures and thought she wanted me to be in commercials. And I told the lady, if you make me say that word one more time, I don't want to say that word one more time. So that didn't work out. Then there was dance class. Couldn't get that right either. So she finally said, what do you want? I said, I want a baseball, a bat, and a glove. She got it. And when she said, okay, go ahead. She thought it was something just for me to do, but she actually sat at my game and noticed I was the best shortstop out there. And I was guaranteed to knock them in if they was on first, second, and third. That carried me all the way through until I probably should have got a college scholarship doing it. But I had kids and things changed. But baseball has always been a love of my life, too. I guess that's instilled somewhere in here from Vince. I just want to thank you guys all for listening to my story and being here for my dad. It really means a lot that so much of you guys cared about him, and he meant so much to you guys. And I just want to say thanks. And my son was going to come up and say a couple words, if that's okay. Okay, go on.
Hi everyone, my name is Lamar. I'm his second grandson. And today I just wanted to speak a little bit about my grandpa, Vincent Bailey. Vince Bailey was like a great man. He helped others beside like his family. The first time I went to like one of his actual like AA meetings, like we walked in and then everybody was like yelling his name from the right side of the room, left side. And then I was walking with him and I'm just looking like, whoa, why is everybody coming up to him? So then I was wondering the whole time. And then like during his AA speech, like he started like telling more about his life and everything. And then after, like I asked him a bunch of questions about like what was, like when we were in the car, I asked him like, why did everybody come up to you? Why were you so well recognized? I had this thought in my head. I was like, he probably wants me to like shut up now because he probably thinking like, oh, how many more questions would this kid ask me? Like, can I relax? And then it went to like, we came out here probably about a year ago in the summer. Like one morning I woke up and I asked him if I can get a phone. And then he was like, yeah, sure. And then he asked me, he was like, well, when you want to go? And I was like, today, if it's possible. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So then we went to the grocery store and everything. And I was just sitting patiently waiting. Then we went to his doctor and we waited like about, I waited in the lobby for about 2 hours. I went to sleep. And my mom came back and she was like, oh my God, you were snoring. And I was like, for real? And I had drool like on the side of my face. So I wiped it off. We got in the car and then we went downtown and we went shopping and everything. And then we finally got into the store. And like when I was getting out the car, I was kind of like jumping around and everything. So then like we walked in the store and you know how like when you walk in the phone store, it has like scent. So then like the first thing I did, I got in there and I smelled the store, gave it a big whiff. And then like he was like, oh yeah, go ahead, get whatever phone you want. And I already knew what kind of phone I wanted. So I walked straight there, and then I got back and I gave it to the dude, and he was like, wow, that fast? And I was like, yeah, I already had what kind of phone I wanted. We left, and my phone was set up and everything. And the whole way home, I was bragging to it about my mom, everything, how she had an Android, and I got an iPhone. And then I guess about 2 hours later, she went back and got another one. As we were in the car on the way home, they had a little joke, and it was like, if you mess up, this is what you're gonna get. And he had about like 3 flip phones in his car. And then he was like, pick which one you getting. And I was like, I'm gonna pick this one. And I pointed to my iPhone. He was like, all right, we gonna see. So then, like, from there on out, even though I messed up a little bit, like, I've been keeping myself together just like to have the iPhone. Vince, he was just a great man, and he always was fresh from head to toe.
Perry is going to come up and recite the baseball prayer.
A baseball player's prayer. God, grant me wisdom to tell a strike from a ball, to know where to throw and never to fall. Keep me always in the baseline, running straight and true, and I'll look for your sign to stretch 1 into 2. God, give me vision to see every pitch, so if a player needs help, then I will see which. Let me always hustle so I'll be at my best, and take pride in myself, in sports and the rest. God, be my strength when I throw the ball, when I'm far from home plate or against the wall. So I never miss a base, please guide my feet. Bring me home safely so my job is complete. When I help younger players, let me always give praise, so they'll see you in me in all of my ways. God, please guide our coach to be fair and smart, to teach us to be good. Let it come from his heart. Let me take a loss just as well as a win. To do any less is surely a sin. As long as I can play, let me make my parents proud as I am when they yell my name out loud. However my game ends, let me always have fun. If heaven has all stars, I want to be one. When my games here are over and my seasons are done, let me play on your team, just like your son. Amen.
So obviously we have a baseball theme, and keeping with our baseball theme, Kurt Danmeyer would like to come up and say a few words. And Vince and Kurt and a lot of folks in this community have spent a lot of years together in the Mudville community and with our kids. So Kurt.
So a couple quick things. Number one, dude, you look just like him. Wow. It's pretty crazy. So Kurt Danmeyer is my name. I'm a parent on Mercer Island, and I want to tell you a little bit about the baseball side of Vince. It's interesting. I don't think any of us even knew about the AA side. He never talked about that. And now I can see that he was a whole with these two sides, kind of. And himself, he came through the same in both ways. So I had a team, this guy right here, my now 25-year-old, and they needed a coach. And it was a team full of Mercer Island kids, and they were soft. They had they had like bedrooms full of participation trophies. And so I called Kurt Boyd, who's here tonight, and asked him, I said, I need a coach who's going to take these soft little boys and show them some real life and toughen them up. And he said, actually, I got just the guy for you. And he said, Vince Bailey. So he gave me the phone number. I called Vince, and you know what Vince is like on the phone, a little bit gruff. And so I called him, and he said, well, yeah, I'll think about it. Why don't you come out? We'll meet. And I said, okay, well, where? And he tells me how to get to the cage. He says, and bring your kid with you, and I'll give him a lesson. And I said, so what do I do? He says, well, just go to the cage and just wait there. And I'm like, okay. And so I get here, and this is a little bit freaky when you're used to going to it's a little bit different from most baseball facilities. You pull up, and so I'm sitting here, and the first thing you see, of course, is Yeller, right? Yeller comes coming down, and then Vince comes ambling down, and he gives Max a lesson, and I'm kind of watching, and I'm waiting for him to ask me about the team. He doesn't say anything. And finally I come to this understanding. He's the Yoda of baseball. He's kind of given Max these wisdoms. And so finally we talked about it. Okay, I'm going to coach the team. Great. So first practice comes around, and of course I'm putting the team together. I want to be there to watch it. He drives up in his car, parks, undoes the lift gate, and some of the players are up by the field just sitting there, and Vince just quietly gets out, walks up to the field, and just sits down. And the players are like, whoa, what's going on here? And after about 5 minutes, he just stands up and he goes, well, I'm not going to bring the gear up here. And it was like, welcome, boys, to the real world. So when I hired him to be this coach, he says, okay, I will coach the thing, but there's one rule. I don't want any input from parents on who's going to play. None. So after about 7 games, and I'd put this all together, I talked all these parents into doing this. After about 7 games, it was pretty obvious that he had this method where he had like 5 players who he was going to play pretty much all the time, and then the rest of the players were going to cycle through. And as luck would have it, one of those kids was one of those players was my kid, and I was starting to feel a little embarrassed. I'd put this thing together, and all the other parents are looking at me like, "Oh, I see, your kid gets to play all the time." So I actually called Vince up and says, Vince, I know you told me I couldn't say who was playing, but would you mind playing my kid a little less? Because it's kind of embarrassing for me. And he said, absolutely not. I told you I'm going to pick the players, and I don't want this call ever again. And I said, well, at least you have to laugh that you've never had any parent ask you to play their kid less. And he did laugh about that. So it was always about the process for him. It was kind of never about winning. He was always about skill building, but really, of course, skill building and baseball was only allegory for character building with all these boys. And there were several times when he would do things that were quite comical, but really showed that he didn't really care about the winning. He cared about these kids learning to pay attention, learning to be baseball players. One team, they were having a struggle laying down a bunt. And in practice, they weren't really taking it very seriously about learning to bunt. So they go into the next game, and without Vince saying a word, for 2 full times around the order, every single pitch, he gave the bunt sign. So for 18, no, they're batting probably 11. So for 22 in a row, every pitch, like 3 pitches, 4 pitches an at-bat, it's always to the bunt sign every single time. That is legendary in our home. That is called the bunt game. So he also was really passionate about if you would miss the signs. And he would give a sign, and if you missed it, he would give it maybe one more time. Another pitch would happen. You didn't do what he told you to do. And then he would just yell, "Steal!" Just everybody knew, but you had to do it, right? I mean, it was pretty. Of course, I don't know I don't know if the AA side, you guys might not know Oscar. You guys all know Oscar? Maybe not. Oscar and Vince were a team. They were, I likened them to Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon. Of course, Oscar was the Ed McMahon guy. And Oscar was all style. All style. And Oscar, I talked to some players today, and they said Oscar was in style today back then because he was wearing the retro clothes that he still had that were out of style, right? Right? It was, and they're all saying, I wish I had Oscar's clothes from 12 years ago today. Oscar probably doesn't even have his clothes from 12 years ago. And they all very much tell the story when they went to Phoenix, and they were all after a game, they're all around the pool, and Vince, of course, is always floppy hat and, you know, big loose stuff, and Oscar comes out wearing nothing but an original Speedo. And, you know, he was pretty buffed. He actually could pull it off, but the kids were just like, oh my God. There are no secrets with Oscar. But Vince was a floppy hat. He's like one of the few baseball guys that always wore a bucket hat, right? Very rarely did I ever see him wear a regular baseball hat. It was always a bucket hat and kind of floppy clothes and always cool shoes. He always had a lot of shoes, and they were always cool, and they were all super athletic. The Vince and Oscar show really went fully live in the post-game talk. Okay, so this team didn't always win, and they had some pretty horrific games, and you know they'd go out in the outfield afterwards, and Vince and Oscar would give them the post-game talk, and Vince would be, well, you know, we threw the ball around a little too much. We got to think about it before we throw. You can't make silly errors. And then Oscar, you can't make silly errors. The next one would be, you know, we got to really just hit the ball harder, and you got to hit line drives. You got to hit it right at the pitcher. You got to spin the clown. And then Oscar, you got to spin the clown. And then here's how they actually interacted with these boys, because Vince was kind of like a mom and dad kind of a thing almost. One of the players in one of the games, who shall remain nameless, gets on first and gets picked off, but picked off far enough that he didn't even get all the way back to the base, and so ran towards second, got in a pickle. There was an overthrow, made it to second, but the overthrow went far enough. He went toward third, got in a pickle. There's an overthrow, and he got past it, and he went toward home, got in a pickle, an overthrow, and scored. And Oscar is just like guffawing, just you know, is beside himself, and Vince is just like the whole time. You know, the thing about Vince, Julie, I want to thank you for asking me to talk today, because it really, of course, Vince is a big part of my life and our family's life, but I also reconnected with a lot of the people from our shared lives. In fact, today I talked with about 6 or 7 different people who were on those teams. And it was just super interesting because they all had exactly the same view of Vince. And it was that, and 10 years, 12 years post the seasons, you know, during the seasons, you're kind of into maybe winning, but Vince wasn't always into winning. And what they all said to a man that I talked to today was that Vince cared only about the people. He only cared about the long view of you as a human, as a person, as a man. And he only used baseball as a mechanism to get his philosophies to you. And they all look back and say he was singularly a standout of all their youth coaches, because all the other youth coaches, myself included, spent far too much time talking about winning and wanting to win. Vince looked way beyond that. He was a long ball player in that he was thinking about these men in their future. And connecting with them all today, I have to say he'd be proud. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that. And it just shows the connection that Vince lived his life across all his folks that he would come in contact with the same. And I think we all got that same message, whether it's kids or adults, and it continues today. And one of Vince's close friends out of LA, Rick, is going to come up and say a few words.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rick, and I'm an alcoholic. And I know Vince from the program. I've known him for 31 years. And he was my sponsor. I promised I wouldn't get through this with crying, so I'm going to stop crying. I met him on a Wednesday night, and like you all said, you know, he stood out. There was 1,200 people there, and you could tell that this guy was special, and I didn't understand why. And there was a bunch of guys hanging out with him, and I obviously wanted to be part of that. And I found out that it was sober baseball. They had a sober baseball team, and on Saturday mornings we would go to the yard. And, you know, we'd go in the back of Clancy's house. Everybody'd help clean up all the dog poo. And then we would all go, the women would stay and play volleyball, and the men would go across the street, and they had baseball diamonds. And I didn't quite understand. It's so funny because he never talked about his baseball background. I only knew him from AA. But it became painfully obvious that he was much better than anybody else out there. And Perry and I were talking, and he said, you know, last night, he's like, you know, how did you meet Vince? And I told him, and I said, and we started talking about his baseball at the yard. And I said, you know, it was a lot like watching a cat play with a mouse, because he would be playing shortstop. Guy'd hit the ball, and he'd kind of lean over and grab the ball and kind of just wait. And the guy'd be running, and he'd just wait, and wham! And that ball would go flying. Bam, guy got out. And you wouldn't believe how fast this guy could throw. And he'd do the same thing when he'd get up to bat. He'd and all of a sudden just rip one farther than you've ever seen anybody rip a baseball. And that was Vince. He never really would, he would just show you. He would show you what to do. He would show you what to do rather than tell you what to do. And that's why I followed him like a child, constantly. And, you know, I got this job in New York. I was 2 years sober, and I called him, and I said, and at that time I was convinced that money and a girl and everything was going to solve my problems. And I called him, and I said, Vince, I got some good news, and I got some bad news. And he goes, well, what's the good news? And I said, I got the job. He goes, well, what's the bad news? I said, well, they don't want to pay me enough money. And he goes, damn it, Rick, call your agent and tell them the next offer, you say yes. And I go, but you don't understand. He goes, click. And I was like, shoot. So I had to call, and I told my agent, I said, whatever they offer, just say yes. And he's like, what? And I couldn't tell him my sponsor told me this. So I just said, just say yes. And after the first year, I called him up and I said, you know, that guarantee, I doubled it. I actually got paid twice as much as what they had guaranteed me. And he said, you're finally getting what we're trying to teach you here. It's not about the money. It's about showing up. It's about doing the job, being a good employee. And today I'm married. I have a good job. I have a great life. And I am grateful beyond, like I couldn't see my life the way it is today, but he could. Somehow he could see that my life could be better than it was when I first walked into these rooms. And the other thing about Vince too is you never felt like he felt sorry for himself, ever. You know, I remember the prior time he was in the hospital just recently, and I'd call him every day. and or almost every day. And sometimes I'd wake him up, and he's like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Vince, it's Rick." He goes, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I'm like, "You're the one in the hospital." He goes, "How you doing, Rick?" And that's how he was. He was constantly thinking about other people. He wouldn't, I'd try to get him to talk about him. Like, "Hey, how you feeling?" "I'm feeling good. I'm okay." "How you doing? How's the baby? How's your wife? How's this? How's that?" And it was always other people. And I think that was his gift, is that he realized that when you worry about other people and you help other people, you feel good. And I remember when he started losing his eyesight, I asked him, I said, "How the hell are you giving baseball lessons and you can't see?" And he said very carefully, and I asked him, I go, "Well, and you're also like the scout. You're supposed to be out watching guys. You can't see them." And he told me how he was doing this. And I wanted to make a movie about his life, but Clint Eastwood beat me to it with the Trouble with the Curve, about a guy going blind, and he was a scout. But he was telling me that he would stand over there and he could tell by the sound off the bat what the guy was doing wrong by just listening. And I think that was the key to his life, was he listened. So thank you, Julie, for having me here. I know a lot of guys in Los Angeles who would love to be here today. And we are all forever grateful that Vince was in all of our lives. I in particular. And I can never repay what he's done, not only for me, but for countless people, with no monetary gain, nothing, just to know that that he's helping. So thank you. Thanks.
So once again, it shows how Vince showed up every single day for people that were in his life, and we truly appreciate that. Scott is going to step up next. There he is.
I'm over here. Well, I'm an alcoholic, and my name's Scott. Hello. And so I'm from the AA side. Where's the baseball guy? Good. I first met Vince down in Los Angeles, and I played on a sober softball team that played against Vince's team, and we never won. It was a bit, it was like adults playing with kids out there. I knew Vince down there, and I moved up here to Seattle quite a few years later, and Vince came to our home group one night, and I recognized him, and it was good to see. It was a good connection, right? And when I got asked to do this, someone asked me to maybe tell a couple of Vince stories, and I'm going to tell you, most of the stories I know about Vince are completely inappropriate to share in this setting, so I will not be sharing any of those stories. What I can share with you is that Vince could give a joke, and Vince could take a joke. And we used to mess around with Vince a little bit. We'd ask him to read during the meeting. When a new guy would come in the meeting and ask if he could get a ride home, we'd point him over to Vince. They go, "You mean the blind guy? It's an excellent driver." Vince could also give one. And, he'd about January, February, we get a few new guys roll into the room, and Vince would be, always ask him, had a pretty good year so far, huh? And it was good stuff. He's the kind of guy that would welcome somebody in, welcome to the program with second chances. because he got a second chance. And that's what he knew Alcoholics Anonymous had to offer. Whether he was a student or whether he was a teacher or a mentor, he always was a part of, rather than apart from, the program. And that was Vince's example in our rooms, and that was Vince's lesson in our rooms. And I'll always remember him for that. You know, we talk about playing and the process and the program and winning. Vince went out a winner. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's our happy destiny, right? That's our trudge the road, and certainly Vince trudged through a few moments, but he went out a winner, and I'll always remember him for that. So I thank him for his lessons and his example, and for being a friend in Alcoholics Anonymous. Thanks.
And see, I recognize this guy from baseball, and I haven't seen him in a number of years. Yep.
Patrick, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, man. So, Oscar, this one involves you, and it's a baseball story. So the boys who are in here, I see a lot of players over here. A lot of dads spent time sitting there, watching and throwing balls for Yeller, and picking up. And Satchel was here when we first started coming. My son Ben is 24. Couldn't be here today. Oscar was the judge, and he would sit there, and at the end of a lesson when the kid was gassed, 45 minutes of nonstop legs, physically just doing what they were doing, he'd say, Oscar, we'll let him go when he hits a good one. And the boys would be just knocking balls, laser beams off the back of the canvas right there. And Oscar would go, nope. And Ben's eyes would roll in his head, and Vince would feed him another ball, and Ben would laser another one back to the back, and Oscar would be, nope. And finally, after about 5 or 6, and he would get one, Oscar would go, all right, Ben, you're done. And Ben would just breathe and feel like, okay, lesson's over. And then Oscar and Vince would have a chuckle. It was almost like they had set it up to push him beyond, because that's what Vince did. Vince wanted you to be better. And I talked to Ben last night, and he said, I didn't know that until now, 24 years old, right? Ben had a lot of coaches. Patrick was a coach, right? We've had coaches all the way through. And Ben said Vince was the only coach who didn't want me to make him look better. He wanted me to be better. He said all my other coaches, all they wanted me for was to make themselves look better. But Vince wanted me to be better. And that's why we love Vince. Thank you.
I just wish to thank everyone for coming out. You may not know much of me, but I'm the eldest in that family. I'm Ronnie, and I am an alcoholic too. I'll be 32 next month. That's something I try to keep low ball, but there was something that Vince and I used to talk about, and what it was is that we're not going to pass the madness down. That's a very powerful statement, and we made a pledge on that. We're not going to give it to our children. Don't pass the madness down. I can tell you where he got it from, the baseball. He got it from his dad, Uncle Bubba, and his father. His father could have been a professional baseball player, Uncle George. Uncle George, before he went to Korea, was enlisted, or I should say drafted by, then it was the Hollywood Angels. Before it was the Los Angeles Angels, where they played out of Wrigley Fields on the east side. Yeah, you remember that. See, I know the story. I know the story how he got it because his coach was his father, Uncle George. And I played ball. And they were a bit more hard on me because I was the oldest. I couldn't make the team because I was just about a little bit too cocky because I was too damn good. That's what I thought. Yeah. I could lay down a bunt, I could drag bunt, I could hit it, I could field. But his father says, no, Ronnie, you can't make it. But what he was showing me was humility. It took me some years to get that. And the humility is that one thing that my uncle taught me, his father, he says, you work to keep a cash flow, but the things that God give you, that will support you. Well, that's what he showed me about diversifying a portfolio. You know, you work, but the things that you love to do, that's going to take care of your family. Because, see, his father had a screen shop when he came home that he hired me where I got my little money from. He also hired his father when they were pregnant, the wives, his mother and my other auntie. And I never forgot that. Now, of course, my hustling took me to other places, other dark places. But right now, today, because of what his father said and what my Uncle George said, it really came to fruition because when there was this past recession, well, I took the diversification and I hired my son when he lost his job at Century City. Now, that's to help take care of him. But the character came from both Uncle George and Uncle Bubba, Ernest. But see, we had a grandfather. Let me just go a little deeper. Granddaddy, he played ball. That's how Uncle George and Uncle Bubba got it. Uncle Bubba had a 90-mile-an-hour softball, underhand. The man had a breaking ball. I know, I seen it. His father was he was like a cat, like you said. But most of all, they were instilling character. That's today what I can say is character. Because the things that I did back then, off track, it resonates every day about what his father said and what his father said about now I'm in mental health. I see veterans. But I also see young ladies with children that are being destroyed, and I try to help them. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. You see, character is something you can't buy. Vince used to talk to me about fundamentals. That's why I was kind of smiling to myself. He said, you know, I don't give a damn about all that. He says, they can sit up there and hit 100 this way, left-handed, 100 right-handed, because he said character and fundamentals would take you in places because it gives you the endurance, it gives you the patience. Well, where did he get that from? His father and his uncle. I mean, his brother, which was my other uncle. You see, things happen for a reason. And I wore this jacket for a reason. The Old Negro Baseball League. Because I came right out of that in 1946 when I was born, when Jackie Robinson just broke the majors. And Satchel, oh, I haven't got there yet. See, because everybody's talking about Old Yeller here. But he knew who my favorite dog was Mac. Mac that was my dog. Mac was sly. Mac would bite you. Mac didn't take no stuff. He did not bark, but he stood his grounds. Then there was Satchel, like the young kid. And then his Yeller, just laid back. So I see it all. You see, I just been blessed to meet Julie. You know, I used to go up to the house, San Leandro, to the Oakland Hills. And I used to share about in my younger days when I was up there, back in the 60s. Matter of fact, we took a picture on the corner of Haight-Ashbury. And I told him some of the stories about what was going on in my life during that time in the Fillmore District. Some of you remember. You're not saying anything, but some of you do remember, you know, with the Booker T and what have you. But I know for a fact, when I look at the sea of faces, how he has touched those that he has always come in contact with. You know, you're right, I call him. How you doing, man? You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. We send back a few cliches. But the main thing was he kept his promise. And that's what I'm taking. He kept his promise. He's not passing the madness on, man. He's not passing it on. See, because you never get your final report card till you check up out of here. Well, he's got all A's as far as I'm concerned.
I'm Judy, and I'm an alcoholic. Some of us have lost our legs, and some of us never grew new ones. Anyway, Vince was the women's baseball coach at the Pacific Group. And they kept putting me in different spots because I kept letting the ball go by. Finally, they put me in shortstop. And Clancy came, that was his sponsor. And Clancy would be yelling at me, "Put your mitt up, catch the ball, don't let it go by you." I thought if I could see the ball, I'd catch it. So Vince taught me, he says, just hold your mitt kind of up there, and you could just catch it. So I did that the next time, and I caught the ball. And he even taught me how I hit 2 home runs during that period of time. I was so lucky. And then I heard that Vince, I just heard that story again today. He hit a ball all the way across several fields at the baseball. I thought, oh my God. So I would go on a Friday night after work and practice. I wanted to be like Vince to hit this ball. And then later on, he was having his foot problem and eye problem, and we shared about our diabetes. I've been a diabetic since I was 10 years old, and I have a lot of the same problem. And just recently, my hands are purple. I was going to have the same surgery Vince went to. It takes 3 surgeries. He said, let me do it first, and if it don't work, don't do it. And another thing happened just recently. I moved way up to a place called Fauntleroy. It's far away from where I used to live, and I don't drive a car. So I told the people in my home group it took 2.5 hours to take 3 buses to the meeting. And because he got up after I did, he said he didn't know that he'd take 3 buses to get to the meeting. But when he was talking about it, he was thinking of me and not himself. And 3 people came up after the meeting, and now I have a ride to my home group. All right. Because of Vince. And then I remember when Vince first met Julie, that was so funny. Oh, yeah. You know, all these things are coming back to me. I'm going to miss Vince. I have great memories of Vince, lots of memories. I now know how to play baseball. So after that, I got on a girls' baseball, regular baseball team. And for many years, I played baseball with different AA teams. I could hit a ball. Anyway, I'm so grateful to Julie and the family. I remember you. Yeah, he was so funny. And then the worst thing that happened at those baseball, you had to clean up the dog poop at his house before you could sit and eat. You waited in line for everything. You got a coupon to go get your food, coupon to get your dessert. I never thought I would do any of those things. And I'm here to tell you, because of doing all those things, I had been sober by then a while, and my program was getting kind of boring. I now have 48 years of sobriety. I love Alcoholics Anonymous and its people. I had no idea how much other baseball things he did. I'm so impressed with this group of people. Isn't this wonderful? Yes. It's one of the most fantastic experiences. I wish Vince was sitting here with us. Yes.
He is, though. He's watching all this.
He'd be looking for a clean sock. During rainy season, his feet would be all soaking wet. I just did the homeless program, and I had a pair of brand new socks. He said, "You got a sock in that backpack of yours?" He was shocked. I said, "Here." You know, I had great experience with Vince. And I have no fear of death because of him. He died very gracefully. You know, we used to go see him. And he left Perry. He said to me, "Call Perry. He'll be your driver now." So already, Perry, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he's lined up meetings. We're going all over the place. So I'm grateful for all of you to come here, and I'm grateful to be able to share a little. Thank you.
I'm Clarence. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Man, this is so awesome. You know, this is a reflection of Vince. He has so much compassion and love and kindness in his heart, and it resonated. If you knew Vince, it was all about love. But he was my sponsor for 5 years, and I didn't get that from him. I didn't get that from him until to the end of our relationship. Vince was a hard nut to crack. As a sponsee, I had to call him 3 times a day. I mean, 3 times a week. And if I had a resentment or I had problems, you know, and I used to get pissed off at Vince because he didn't always validate me. He didn't see things my way, you know, and he was so methodical with the way he was. I mean, you couldn't crack Vince for nothing. But he was so giving. And what I learned from Vince, because I used to go to his speaker meetings. Vince spoke a lot in this state. I mean, he spoke, it was almost every week or every other week. And so when I went to the speaker meetings, man, I've been up north, Bellingham, Tacoma, on the ferry. I've been everywhere with Vince. So when we go to a speaker meeting, he would tell me, everything was always in action, man. Do something, do this, do this. He said, so after the speaker meeting, he would tell me, he said, go and meet a newcomer. Go help with the cheers. Go help do this. Go help in the kitchen. And I would say, really, man? I said, you know, we're not at a home group. But the thing about AA though, you're always in service though. You're always in action. And I learned this from Vince. So, and I remember the first time I did a speaker meeting, me and Vince headed out because I like to wear hats. Because I met Vince at Pine Lake speaker meeting, and Vince loved hats. He has a nice collection of hats. So do I. And so I remember, we had it out again about wearing a hat when you in front of a podium, right? That's what he told me. He said, at a speaker meeting, you don't wear a hat. And I had a hard time with that. We kind of fell out. So Vince went to Europe one year. This is 2 years ago. Vince went to Europe, and Clancy was coming to town. That's Vince's sponsor, man. He loved Clancy, always. And Vince was just like Clancy. Clancy was a mean son of a gun, for real. But he was giving, though. He had a big heart. So anyway, Vince was in Europe, and Clancy was coming to Pine Lake on a Saturday. And Vince, he shot me a text. He said, Clarence, when you meet Clancy tonight at the meeting, make sure you take your hat off, right? So I said to myself, you got to be kidding. Who is this guy? Who is this Clancy guy? So I was at Pine Lake that night. So I was the greeter. When I do Pine Lake, I get there early and I'm the greeter. So I knew Clancy was coming, right? So I said, okay, if I stand outside, because I was a greeter, I can cut him off at the pass and I don't have to take my hat off, right? So what happened, so I didn't see Clancy come in. I kept looking for Clancy. I kept looking for him. So I went inside, so I seen him up front sitting down. I seen Clancy, right? So this is my first time meeting Clancy. So I went up to Clancy. I said, and Vince told me to tell him that, he was my grand sponsor and all that, and he was his sponsor. So I went up to Clancy. I said, hey, I'm Clarence. Vince is my sponsor. He said, oh. He said, you know what? He said, these people in here at the speaker meeting, he said, they don't know how to dress. They don't know nothing. He said, and the next time you see Vince, you tell Vince to get his shit together. And Clancy said, and the next time you talk to me, you take that hat off. So now I'm pissed off again, right? So I go back down and I sit down and I listen to Clancy. He gave a good speech at the speaker meeting, and Clancy did a lot for a lot of people back then. Clancy really did a lot for the homeless. But anyway, so now I'm mad. So I said, okay, wait a minute. I didn't want to leave there with a resentment, right? So Clancy spoke. So he went over there and people lined up to see Clancy, to shake his hand, good meeting and all that. So I stood in line with my hat off this time, right? So I stood in line, so I got to Clancy, and I seen this one lady came up to Clancy. She wanted to take a selfie with Clancy, and he didn't like that. No, he told that lady, no. She said, oh, no, please, come on. He said, no selfies. So I got up to Clancy with my hat off. He said, come over here. He said, listen, let's take a selfie with your grand sponsor and send it to Vince in Europe. So that's my, it was hard in the beginning though, but I tell you what, in the end, to see Vince when he was in the hospital, and I know the last time I seen Vince, the last time I seen him when he was in the University of Washington Medical Center, it was in the afternoon, and I was in the room, and we was talking for a long time. I was sitting there, and we were just having a regular, normal conversation, and the lady came in, and because I had and Vince, we always talk about mountains because he liked the fact that I hiked, and he was just so supportive of me, man. He gave me so much confidence. So I was telling him about my new hiking shoes, and so the lady came in, and she changed the wrap, the changed the bandage on his legs. And I seen he had a couple toes missing. I'm sorry. And he never told me. He never told me. We sitting up there talking the whole time, and it just hurt me so bad. I'm sorry. And I walked out of the hospital, and I said, this man, you know, and I knew, because my family members had diabetes, and a lot of them, they just didn't make it. And I was thinking about that, and it just, I don't know why these thoughts came into my mind, but it hurt me so bad. But he was just so cordial and casual about it. It didn't faze him. Not like it did me. And that's the way he was. But he went out with pride and dignity. We took a lot of meetings to the hospital. We brought meetings to the house in the last couple of months, man. And I tell you what, this program, the people in this program of AA are so awesome, so loving, so caring, man. And this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about right here. You know, you just look around. It's over 100 people here. That is so awesome. And you know, I just want to thank everybody that helped put this together. It was a lot of work. This used to be a betting cage. This was a betting cage. Yeah, man. This was his life. And this is where the lab. Yeah. And this is where we at today. This is what he wanted. You know, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out, man. This is just so awesome. This is what love is all about, man. It's action. It's in action. You know, that's what I learned from Vince. That's all he cared about. Just do something. Do something. You know, and he used to tell me, he said the Big Book was the most boring book he ever read. And when he told me that before I knew that he couldn't see that good, I figured out that's probably why, because he can't read. But hey, I just want to thank everybody, man. This is awesome, man. This is the way it's supposed to be. You know, this is the way it's supposed to be. And this is the kind of man Vince was. He loved everybody. And I'm just going to say one more thing. I did a speaker meeting 3 weeks ago over in Bellevue, and the other lady that spoke, she came up to me after the meeting because I had shared about Vince a little, and she told me that how Vince came up to her and he told her right off the bat, he said, listen, I'm not trying to hit on you. I just want to help you. And he told her that. And he was able to get her work and get her off her feet. And she shared that with me. And this was the first time I ever seen this lady. But it was just so awesome, though. And that's the way Vince was, man. And I can't thank everybody enough for being here. Thank you. God bless. I love you.
You could see the emotion and the love in his heart for Vince. And one of the most precious moments was in the hospital one of the last days when I walked into the room and he was just rubbing Vince's arm. And we all basically were holding Vince's hand. And it was this large community of friends that came together. And with Julie too. And Julie shared with us in a small group of some of the stuff that happened towards the end with Vince and all the folks that surrounded Vince from everywhere. And a lot of people, I think, like Kurt mentioned, that didn't know Vince's AA life. And there's been that connection from what happens here. So if you didn't know that, you almost just went through an AA meeting. But Jeremiah, this doesn't count as a meeting for you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Raychek. I am a human being, an alcoholic, but most importantly, a friend of Vince's. And hi, this isn't going to be easy for me either, but I first met Vince. Ironically enough, I was at the Pacific Group in '94, and he was reading a poop sheet. Ironically enough, and we started to talk, and we became off and on friends because back then I was traveling a lot, doing music and running all over this marble we have, and we were but Vince became a very good friend over the years. We got into some projects together. I'm an archivist in AA. I study history and I like to document and restore things. And to me, the goal of an archivist is to try to take a piece of AA history and help it find its way home. I find something and I try to find where it belongs so that we can tell our story better and understand our own history better. And Vince has an archive that's so big, he doesn't even know what was in it. And he asked me some time ago if I would help him document it and get it into digital, and maybe we can use that to pay forward. We've been working on that for years, and today's not the day to discuss it further, but I just want everyone to know that I would love to continue, and because he asked me, and I like to finish what I started, but I have a few things for you and for the family. In 2017, a few days after our house fire, he gave me a recording of a talk that he did. It was a broken file. It was an MP3. The data was corrupt. He's like, we don't have a good copy of this. Can you try to restore it? Because that's one of the things I do. Well, I mean, I just lost everything in a fire, but I was like, I don't have anything to do this with. He's like, just hold on to it. So as we got back up to speed, my wife and I kept trying to work on this file. It's just blown out. Any of you techies, the headers were gone. And in an MP3, that's toast. Because you don't know what kind of format, what bit rate, what's type. It's just toast. But I never gave up. I kept working on it and working on it. And recently, unfortunately, I didn't get it to him in time. But I was able to finally restore this recording. And I have it. And I'm going to give that to you in a moment. I also have the SoCal, the 66 SoCal convention, when he talked and you ran that run and you came in 4th place. And you said to him, I'm the first one in the loser's bracket. And he said, no. For 27 years at the time, you've always been number 1 with me. That recording's here too. Both restored and in such pristine quality. You're not going to believe it because I also am an audio engineer. Forensics is my bag. So there's a story he used to tell when he talked, and it's on one of these recordings, about a boy on the beach. And the tide comes in and there's life on the shore. And he was picking up the starfish and he was throwing them back into the water. And a man came up to the boy and said, you can't save everybody. What's the point? Why even trying? He looks down, he picks up a sea star and he throws it in the water. He says, well, I saved that one. I saved that one. I want to thank you for allowing Barbara, Rebecca, and I when we went to visit in the final days. And thank you for just giving us a few moments because I was able to say a silent prayer. And I remember that prayer. I said, Vince, God, please obviously help everyone in this situation, but I hope this isn't goodbye. But I'm so grateful for the hello. Thank you. And with that, I give you these.
It's me again. We just have some farewells that we have from my brothers, and I just want to get a chance to read. Hi, Daddy. It's me, Mitchell. I miss you so, so much. I want you to know that I might not have had enough time with you, but you will always be my daddy. I feel so lucky to have had you in my life as long as I have had. I will miss you forever and love you always. Love you, Daddy. Your son, Mitchell Bailey. Hey, Dad. This all seems so unreal. It's really hard to put my thoughts into words. Saying goodbye to you is rougher than I could ever have expected. I constantly still to this day want to call you or even text you. I love you, Daddy, and will always miss you beyond thoughts. Love always, your son, Deshaun Bailey. Vincent, I am saying my farewells to my brother as we grew up. We were inseparable on weekends and fell out when we parted, and our love for one another never parted. Love you, Vincent, until we meet again. Love, your cousin, Malcolm Bailey. Well, Mr. Bailey, it's me, Tiffany. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for being my dad. Thanks for loving me and supporting me. You helped me believe in myself when sometimes I forgot how. And for that, I thank you, Daddy. All of our time spent together will remain in my heart forever. It may be selfish for me to want you for a lifetime, but I know you had to go on to the next phase of your never-ending life. Even though I can't see you, I can't touch you, I can't hear you, I know you will always be listening to hear me talking to you. We will see each other again in the afterlife. And our reunion this time will be forever. Just as my love is for you. I will miss you always, Daddy. In closing, to my final farewell, know that goodbyes are not forever or the end. It simply means I will miss you until we meet again. I love you, Vincent Bailey. Te amo, Papa. Your daughter, Tiffany Bailey. I'm gonna miss my daddy so much. Vince, you will always be the love of my life. I love you always and forever. Your wife, Julie. And I'm gonna let my son read the rest.
First off, I just want to say thank you for everything you did for me, Pops. You were the best grandfather a person could ever have. And I'm pretty sure if we all had one wish at this moment, it would be to have you back in our lives. And I just want to thank you for everything you did for me, everything you did for the people you love. But I have one promise that I can make to you at this moment, that I, Lamar Black, aka Junior, will get a college degree for you no matter what obstacles I have to go through. And I know for a fact you would be happy to see me succeed in life as a young black individual, man. Thanks for everything. Long live the chief. Vincent Bailey, your grandson, Junior. Always loved, never forgotten.
All right, so I just want to share a couple of things. First of all, thank you. I have to say that, as you all know, this is not an easy time. There's so many people here who mean so much to me, to Vince, to everyone. I was sharing with a group of folks about, a week or two ago, and Patrick asked me to share the story because it was touching. One of the things that I said at the time was that, going through something like this in many ways has brought back my faith in humanity. There are so many things, so much in the world that is so distracting and can be so difficult. And just the way that everyone has pulled together over the last, 2 months, 3 months, particularly the last month, the group of folks, Barbara, Julie, Patrick, Perry, Clarence, David, and many others I know. I've forgotten you, I don't mean to, who have helped pull all this together and have been there with me. My God, humanity is great. Humanity is wonderful. People are there to help. I've learned to let people help me, which is a very difficult thing for me, which is, Vince left me a note. The very bottom, it said, Julie, let people help you through this. Do not do it yourself. It's much too hard. So there's a Vinceism right there. But I just want to say, I feel like my faith in humanity has been restored. And I just appreciate every single person and everyone who's helped me through this time. Thank you all.
But thank you all for spending time with us today. Hopefully you received a story of Vincent's life in various different forms. And it's really a story of experience, strength, and hope that connects us all, that we continue to take from this and think of Vince often as we go about our daily lives, and try to pull up people and be there for people. Even though, as Julie said, this world is a little crazy at times, but this is a really important thing to have in our hearts as we go about our daily lives. So again, thank you. Perry?
It's written on the back of this coin that Vince gave me at 20 years sober. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen.